Welcome back, everyone. What's good? Chris here again from SoundFreqs, and today we're going to be taking a look at a patch called Tungsten Twine. You can find that in the Trap Volume 3 preset collection for FM8. You can grab that over at the SoundFreqs website or at the Loopmasters website, your choice. Thank you in advance for the support. And just so we're all looking at the same patch here as we go through this, I'll go ahead and double click this and reinitialize our Tungsten Twine preset and switch over to the Easy Morph view, as that is actually the area that we'll be taking a look at primarily. And today, we're just going to be talking about another way that you can go about inputting and tweaking your modulation and automation of that modulation in your own productions. Just before we get started on that, let's take a listen to the sound. I'll just hit play on this quick little MIDI sequence that I put together. It's really nothing special, and drag this around a bit so you can hear what the main options are for this sound on the morphing matrix. All right, so you get the idea. It's a funky little drunken sound that fits well within the trap category. Obviously, there's a lot to play with here, so you can decide what kind of music you want to make with this yourself. It's certainly not relegated to just trap music. So without further ado, let's talk about this quick little workflow tip. I spend a lot of time helping people build and like deconstruct and rebuild their workflows, a lot of training with synths and DAWs and whatnot. And I've noticed over the years that people are very much in black and white mode when it comes to automation, how they get their modulation changes for synths and samplers into their productions. Most people are either hand programming all of it, just getting in there and putting in every single little automation plot point with their mouse or stylus or whatever, and then tweaking to their heart's content, which is great. It gives you full control. It can also be quite time consuming. And then there's the other extreme on that spectrum, and that is the folks that just kind of map all of their desired parameters to their favorite hardware device, and they run through a whole bunch of different shakes trying to get the modulation curves correct that they want for their production. And, again, also very organic, intuitive, but time consuming. So what I'd like to introduce to some of you, I'm sure many of you are already aware of these options, but again, these are for the masses. So would like to kind of introduce the idea of just kind of shooting down the middle and taking advantage of certain types of tools and then further tweaking to your liking later. So without further ado, let's just get into the automation view here inside of Logic. And you don't have to use Logic to follow along with this. Most DAWs offer basically the same exact functions. Certain things may have a different name or may live in a different menu, but they all pretty much do the same thing these days. So by default, most DAWs are going to be adding your automation to a track rather than region by default, and by default normally it's volume. That's the kind of ever-present parameter there at the surface. And then there are your automation input modes. Okay, so click this and it will disclose our four main modes for automation. First one is read, and that's on the far left side of the extreme of the spectrum. And that basically means that you're never actually going to record any MIDI information. You're actually just going to hand program it or click around with your mouse. And that's easy enough done. You just click somewhere and click another time and you add another point, double click and remove. Very basic and pretty darn intuitive, but again, time consuming. Now, write is on the opposite side of the spectrum, the far right side. And this is actually a pretty destructive process all in all, because it continually overwrites what you've already laid down during recording session. So for instance, since this is a 4-bar loop, because this is a looped region, now it's not looping, now it's looping. That's what this yellow bar indicates. And if we had that set to right, by the time that our playhead here reached the end of the 4th bar, it's going to get right back to the beginning of the first, and it's going to just overwrite everything that you recorded the first time through. Okay. So what I would recommend is actually latch, even over touch. And the reason I say that is because it's going to be for everyone, whether you're using a software interface or your favorite hardware controller, it really doesn't matter. And the other reason is because it's going to monitor and engage with multiple different parameters that are changing in tandem in real time. And it's going to create separate automation lanes for you for each one of those things. Okay. So just a little pro tip here, click this little disclosure triangle to the left of your automation mode, and you're going to see the various lanes that you've programmed automation into. Now, the pan automation track has nothing programmed into it, but again, it's just a default, okay, just like the volume. So we're going to switch this to latch, and we're just going to grab this morphine square, and we're going to move it around. And it's not going to be anything specific. It's just to get the point across of how this actually works functionally. And while we're doing it, we're also going to add a little bit of random seeding to this, and I'll explain that as soon as we're done with the recording. And we're just going to do one little 4-bar loop here, so it's going to be a very quick capture. So here we go. Okay, so as you can see, what we did here is, well, maybe I'll open that back up so you can actually see how those things change as this plays back. And you can see all of these different automation plot points. And basically, whenever there's any kind of change or deviation from either the x-axis or y-axis or on them, it's going to create a new plot point in your automation curve. And as with most DAWs, you just double-click one to make it go away, click and drag it to move it. If you encounter another plot point in your edit, it's probably just going to overwrite the other one, just like what you saw there. And if you go back, it's going to bring it back. Okay. So let's take a look at what we actually captured here. So as you can see, it's almost like watching a screen recording. It actually captured the additional changes of our seeding. Okay, now what this does is, and I'll just go ahead and I'll expand both the X and the Y axis seeding parameters here. And you can see that these are now going to just kind of snap back to where they were because we're at a specific point in our automation programming. If we leave that, we can kind of see here these individual points in our morphine matrix. And that just basically means that we're going to pull parameter values from these various points in the morphine matrix. So when it's here, for instance, we're actually grabbing different parameter settings or elements that affect the overall timbre or delivery of our sound from each one of the 4 quadrants. Okay, so it's going to give us a rather unique variation on the sound is all. Okay. And again, we use the latch mode. And again, it couldn't be easier to go in and adjust these to your liking. You zoom in as far as you want, and you can explore this stuff on a very detailed level. And you can quickly start to realize just how powerful this whole shortcut is, this whole process is. Now, in the background, you can also see here that we made changes to the seeding, and those are going to show up highlighted in your automation list here, okay, which is showing you all of your active automation lanes. All right, so that's it. Hope this made some sense for all of y'all that this was new to. And that we didn't bore all of you who already know all about latch automation recording. Hope you can put it to use in your very next project, and we hope to see you again here soon. Thanks for tuning in, folks, and we'll see you again. Cheers.